Contrary, officers will not be required to document casual conversations such as saying hello or providing directions. The NYPD's own training manual makes clear that casual conversations do not constitute an investigative encounter, and the text of this bill explicitly makes them exempt from any need for documentation. I think it's good to note that last statement again, that the text of this bill makes them explicitly exempt from any need for documentation. The NYPD will maintain significant flexibility in how they choose to implement this bill, and we believe the department has an obligation to adopt procedures that ease any administrative burden on police officers, particularly thank Public Advocate Jumani Williams and my council colleagues for sponsoring and supporting this bill. I also want to thank the community of advocates who fought tirelessly to make this bill possible. With that, I urge my colleagues to vote yes to override the veto. And what I want to invite the public advocate, if he will, to make a statement. Hold on for one moment. I also want to recognize Councilmember Vernikoff, who's online remotely.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. That sounds awesome to say. It sounds very awesome. Peace and blessing, love and light to everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here. I have to say it is quite frustrating to be here. I'm sorry that we have to be here, but I want to thank the speaker, Mr. Chair, and co-sponsor, Councilmember Alexa Aviles, and in particular the families who are here and the advocates for helping us get here. Despite all of the misinformation that has been spread about this is simply a reporting bill. I don't say that to understate the tremendous importance of getting information. Reporting data is how we helped curb the abuses of stop, question, and frisk. This is a continuation of that work and the remedial process that was put in. I just want to give an example, and I hope the media picks this up. Mr. Chair, you appear to be a black male between the ages of 30 and 55. It's a level 1 stop from a 911 call that did not raise to another level stop. I believe that took less than 10 seconds, and I assume it may be even less once we have an app and a drop-down menu that works so this can happen seamlessly. That's all we are asking, so we can have a baseline of what is going on when our police encounters or stops, or however we want to call them. We have been trying to have a conversation with this administration for 2 years about how best to implement it. I have not heard them publicly say that we can have that conversation until yesterday. So much of this misinformation, so much of this trying to rip the city apart on a reporting bill could have been prevented if they would have had the conversation they now want to have after this council did its duty by passing a bill and doing its duty about to override it. This is really essential work. This is not about preventing police work. This is police work. We took the patrol guide and used a construct that was already there and using the work to get the information for other stops that already exists. So I'm hoping that the conversations will be fruitful, but I just have to remind how much we tried diligently to have that conversation. Saying you don't want any level 1 stops is not a compromise. It is a gutting of the bill. Having a conversation about how we can do this as seamlessly and efficiently as possible is a conversation that we have been trying to have for many years. So I'm happy that my colleagues will be overriding this. Hopefully the true information about this bill will be getting out to the public, and we stop using fear to ask folks to override their intelligence, and to police officers. Please understand this is about public safety. We have you in our minds as well. and look forward to having the conversation. Just lastly, I want to thank, as I mentioned, all of the colleagues here, but Nick Smith, Elizabeth Guzman, Jeffrey Sevilla, Solomon Azevedo, Gwen Saffron, and a big shout out to Veronica Evries and Rosie Mendez, who really took this on their back for the past 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Advocate. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the following questions. First, shall we accept and file the mayor's veto message?
Pause 1 second. But before we call the vote, does anyone have any remarks that they'd like to make for this committee? This will be in addition to an opportunity to explain your vote. So if there's any remarks you'd like to make, we're going to set a timer for 1 minute, and we're going to set a timer for 2 minutes, and you could go ahead. So we'll start with committee members first. Councilmember Holden.
Yeah, I'd like to take issue with what the public advocate said. I don't question his motives. I understand that's what he feels will work, but as somebody that's been involved with police, not only in ride-alongs in the past and in this past Saturday, I see police work. I also listen to the scanner when I'm home by my computer. I'll just check what's going on in my neighborhood. Now let's say I have 3 police cars out on a particular night. They're holding at least 5 jobs. That's 5 911 calls. Now you're asking them to do additional reports. If anybody ever followed a police officer around, you know they have mountains of paperwork now. So if what the public advocate said was, well, this is only a few seconds. By the way, there could be up to 11 questions with your level 1 reporting. And a level 1 is not a stop, by the way. It's an encounter. That means the civilian does not have to talk to the police officer. They could just walk away. And they're allowed to do that. Let's say an accident, and what the police officers that we were with on Saturday night on the ride-along, if they had, let's say a female was being assaulted, they have to now ask witnesses there who might have seen it. So let's say 10 witnesses they pull aside. 10 of them, or let's say 10 out of the 11 witnesses they pull aside, said they didn't see anything. They still have to report with this bill. They still have to fill out a form. If anybody knows about critical response time, how that is, seconds matter when a life is involved. And we're going to now ask those police officers to make a report based on those 11 encounters, of which really 10 of them, we just found out that they didn't see anything. So that's why I think this bill is counterproductive. That's why all the police are against this, because they know their job. I don't know if the public advocate understands, but there is a lot of paperwork. And if you were at the ride-along, you saw all the paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Osei?
Thank you so much. I mean, I obviously vote aye on this bill. This is common sense. It's a common sense bill. It's a basic bill. The fact that we have been making such a fuss over this piece of legislation compared to so many other pieces of legislation that would truly hold the NYPD accountable is ridiculous, and also plays into what I perceive to be political theater that the mayor is in placing on each and every single one of us here today. I think it's something that he's doing to try to distract us from this budget that he's trying to push through. There are multiple cuts that we're seeing across our city agencies. This bill is at best going to be something that the NYPD does every other day, if we're able to even hold them accountable on collecting the data that they're going to be collecting. This is a NYPD force that has a larger head count than some militaries across the world. We're asking them to collect data, right? Don't get distracted by what the mayor's trying to do. He's trying to take our focus off of his budget that's going to hurt New Yorkers more than a reporting bill that we're trying to get passed, not once, but twice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
My vote today, I want to emphasize the unity. My vote will reflect the core value that we are one city, united and not divided. This act is a stop is a step towards ensuring that every resident, regardless of where they live or what they look like, can trust that their rights are being respected and protected. I have respect for my police. I'm very close. I hold immense respect for them. I want to work close with my police officers. And the division, the word that I'm hearing, is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I will give you an example as a nurse. As a nurse, where I recall vividly that when I had to do paperwork, when we had to change to technology, we did not know. But when we changed to technology, it becomes much easier. And if I'm doing the right thing, I don't have to concern about putting it, because we want to make sure that the great police officers that are doing their work, that is not intertwined with those that don't want to do the work. Giving a report, according to all the statistics we're seeing that folks are being suffered in their community. There's no trust between police officers and community anymore. So if we can make one step toward transparency, I think it's the time to do it now. So before I abstain, because there's so many questions coming to me, and I did not want to make any mistake. I'm saying that maybe there's something that I did not see in the bill. But when I review it and ask questions and go over and over, and I say, if I have to make one step toward transparency to make sure the great police officers that are doing their work can be outstanding as they are, and those that don't want to do the work, then we can see it. So it is about building trust between officers and communities. And as far as the mayor, like the public advocate mentioned, that we can talk. We can have the understanding of what we're doing, because the city of New York is a great city, and we can still hold people accountable if they're doing something wrong. And right now, I'm so happy to be part of the team, the criminal justice team, to make sure that we have the transparency that we need in our community.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Councilmember Palladino.
This has been a bone of contention in this city now for way too long. Our cops have been under attack by a body of people here that I really believe do not understand the full extent of what you guys are trying to do. What you guys are trying to do here is, instead of defunding, you're dismantling our police. You're tying them up with senseless and unnecessary paperwork. When they have a body camera on 98% of the time that records every interaction that they have normally, it's got nothing to do with transparency, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people who live in New York City. Public safety is a #1 issue here in this city, and yet our police are underfunded, understaffed, and overworked. And yet we want to tie them up some more. No, absolutely not. The veto stays. And yet you people seem to think, the people in this body seem to think, don't. Did you hear what I said? I said don't. And I'm going to tell you right now, no, I have my time, I'm going to take my time. That's enough. That is enough. You know, everybody seems to think here that what everybody else has to say is very important, but what we have to say here doesn't seem to matter, when it does. And if you truly represented your communities as you say you do, your communities need policing. Your communities need help. More than anybody, they are crying out for help. And you, as their elected officials, are denying them that help by standing on this self-righteous podium that you've put yourselves on. That is enough. You find it funny? You find me funny? I find you hysterical. Okay? Yes, I find you hysterical. You find me funny?
You're out of order.
You said you found me funny?
You are out of order.
Because you can't take the truth.
Both parties are out of
Both
order.
parties,
Okay.
thank you. Councilmember Aviles.
Colleagues, public, familia, despite what you have heard from the mayor and his allies, this legislation has been years in the making, driven by legal experts, by advocates, by family members, by law enforcement, and by people whose rights have been violated and have spent time in the back of a police car under very different circumstances than some of you have experienced this weekend. But y'all don't know nothing about that. We would not be here without the tenacity of advocates and families affected by police violence. For your unbridled determination to seek accountability, I thank you. To the Speaker and Council leadership and colleagues, I thank you for your diligence and never losing sight of doing what is right instead of what is easy. To my co-sponsor, public advocate, Jumani Williams, who has been relentlessly and unnecessarily attacked, and yet has maintained grace and continued to lead with reason and compassion, a rare leader indeed. I thank you. Accountability and transparency are essential in all aspects of city government, and the NYPD should not be treated any differently. This veto will be for every person who has had an unlawful encounter that took away some of their dignity. For every young person that has made them feel like a suspect instead of a scholar. You know nothing about that. Getting stopped by police is not normal. We should not have to give our children the talk. You would know nothing about that. For every person who has experienced violence and harm, and for those who've lost loved ones, this will not erase any of that, but it is a small step in the right direction. You should be asking yourself, how do we stop unlawful policing, illegal policing? How do we use our resources better? How do we stop racial discrimination? That is the question you should be asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, we'll turn back to the chair before moving on to the vote. Chair, you may go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to remind my colleagues to direct their remarks to the chair. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the following questions. First, shall we accept and file the mayor's veto message? And second, shall introduction 586A pass the objection of the mayor notwithstanding? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Good morning, William Martin, Committee Clerk, roll call vote. Committee on Public Safety. Committee members, the items are coupled. Chair Salam.
I am voting to override. You know, it's interesting, as a chair and as a person with my lived experience, I don't want to bring that into this particular conversation, but I just literally got a message that popped up on my screen that talked about the 25th anniversary since the murder of Amadou Diallo. So I am in favor of the override. And do I vote aye on the override? I vote aye.
Thank you. Ayala.
I vote aye.
Holden.
No.
Rivera.
I vote aye.
Yeager.
No.
Caban.
Permission to explain my vote.
You may go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank the public advocate, the sponsor of the bill, Councilmember Aviles, Chair, all of our colleagues, but first and foremost, the advocates and the families who have been most directly impacted by this. I am a Queens kid who grew up with an older Puerto Rican brother, and I know the effects on a day-to-day basis for my family and my neighbors. And I just want to say, for folks who have made it a recreational activity to listen to police scanners or go on a 4-hour ride along, that I was professionally part of the criminal legal system for years. I was a public defender who cross-examined police officers every single day in court. It was my job and my duty to know the inside and out of the patrol guide, to know every single piece of paperwork and documentation generated by a police officer for any investigative action. And so I am here to tell you, as someone who works professionally within that system, this is not a burden. This is doing the right thing. And if we are going to solve the issues of racist, biased policing outcomes, then we must have the data to do so. We need the information. We will all be safer and healthier for it. And you know what? Particularly, and the reason why we should be doing it is because Black men, brown men will be safer and healthier for it. So I am so proud to be part of this body today, and I vote aye on all.
De La Rosa.
A moment to explain my vote. So here with us today, we have Sammy Feliz, who is the brother of Alan Feliz, who was my constituent and lost his life over a level 1 stop. For those of you who think that it is impossible to lose your life over a level 1 stop, I ask you to speak to Sammy. He knows about that pain. Alan's son, whose mother I went to high school with, will never know his father. And so as the council member for Washington Heights, where we have been at the crosshairs on targeted policing and broken windows, I proudly vote aye, because their blood will not be on my hands.
Joseph.
I vote aye, and as the mother of 4 Black boys, this is a big day for us and all the students that I taught in New York City public schools. I vote aye on all.
Marte.
I vote aye.
Osei.
I vote aye.
Stevens.
A moment to explain my vote.
Let me go ahead.
There's 2 things that I just want to make clear. Officers are already tracking this information. So we have to stop pretending like they're not doing it. It is happening, it is already taking place, and so they can do it either during the interaction or after. So let's stop saying that it's going to overburden them, because it's not. And we also have technology. So the next thing we need to also make sure that we're understanding, if an officer is doing an investigation and they're asking for basic information, wouldn't we want them to track that anyway? How do they go back if they need to go back and get more clarifying information? So saying that we don't want our community safer is ridiculous. This is actually about making our community safer. I worked with kids for 20 years who would often talk about how they would be stopped, checked, all these things for walking down the street. People who are closest to this problem actually have the answers. So maybe let's listen to them and not what we think we know, because we live it every single day. And with that, I vote aye to keep everyone safe, every Black and brown man across the city, not just some. Thank you.
Ariola.
Permission to explain my vote? So I just want to say that I am a mother also of 3 white boys, and I've had that talk with them as well, to make sure that they have their paperwork in order, to make sure that when a police officer approaches them, they roll down their window, take their hood off, and make sure that they treat that officer with respect. So it is not just for certain communities, because it happens in all communities. And we all have those talks. What this is, another reporting bill. A reporting bill that is, again, redundant, like many of our reporting bills, because there's already cameras that are worn by police officers that we just saw this weekend depict what actually happened when our own public safety chair was pulled over. That is recorded already. What we're doing with this bill is causing more paperwork, bogging down police officers, keeping them off our streets, slowing down our response times, and being in a position to have people killed and/or injured because of that loss of response time. For that, I vote no.
With a vote of 9 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative, and no abstentions, M13, Mayor's veto message has been accepted and filed with the committee, and proposed introduction 586A has been readopted by the committee. Chair Salam, that is a full committee.
This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.